My connection to Sacagawea started at a very young age, and I did not know that one day that I would have a chance to, be able to be a voice for Sacagawea. It took over 200 years for Sacagawea to gain recognition from the federal government for the duties that she served during the Lewis and Clark expedition of 1804 to 1806.
Welcome to Business Origin Stories. I'm Amy Schutte, your guide to crafting a magnetic message for a profitable business. This is the podcast for you if you're ready to claim the transformative power of your own origin story and use it to create a brand that finally stands out. We're here to level up, but more importantly, I'm here to help you elevate your influence, your community, and your impact on the world. Go ahead, hit that subscribe button wherever you're listening. And remember, the stories you tell yourself are your greatest currency.
Welcome back to the Business Origin Stories podcast. Today, I have the immense honor to introduce you to Randy L. Teton, who was born and raised on the Fort Hall Reservation in Lincoln Creek District in southeastern Idaho. According to the United States Mint, Randy L. is the youngest and only living model on U.S. currency. She served as the Shoshone model for the Sacagawea coin in 1998 for Santa Fe artist Glenna Goodacre, and in 2000, the coin was released to the public. She has traveled nationwide, representing Sacagawea and her story as the only living model on a coin, and she recently released her first book about Sacagawea. Now, I was homeschooled for a few years, and we went deep into Lewis and Clark and Sacagawea. I got to work with her and take her to a few schools so she could introduce her book to a bunch of our third and fourth graders here, and she's an incredible presenter. She's an amazing storyteller and speaker. And this interview today, I think, is one of my very favorites because she really gives us a deep dive into her story and some really cool Sacagawea history, and also gives us some insight into her culture and growing up on the reservation. And so I'm excited about this interview, and I hope you will go follow her, purchase her book if you have kids in your life. Her Sacagawea book is incredible. It's linked up in our show notes. This one is worth a listen. So with that, here's Randy L. Teton.
All right, Randy L., thank you so much for coming today. It's so nice to see you. We got to hang out in person a month ago? So I've been able to witness you as a speaker and as an author, and I am just thrilled to be able to share your story with my community today. But can you tell everyone where you are right now?
Hello, everybody. In my language, I will say Zondave, which means good afternoon in the Shoshone language. And I'm actually located in Blackfoot, Idaho.
So beautiful. And tell everyone, who are you and why are you here today?
Hello, everybody. Well, I am an indigenous storyteller, which has been a new title added to my resume. I am born and raised from Fort Hall, Idaho. I'm a tribal member of the Shoshone Bannock tribes. We are the largest tribe in the state. And I come from a very large family. Within my family, I am the second to the oldest of six children. And on both of my parents' side, I have 11 children on my dad's side and 11 children on my mother's side. And so I grew up in a community on my father's side, the Teton side, in a district called Lincoln Creek. And it's one of the districts within the Fort Hall Reservation. And we grew up with horses, sagebrush, and hill. And so my memories of growing up here in southeastern Idaho is the beauty of riding horses every day after school, being with my grandparents, my parents, my cousins, and just enjoying the outdoors. And I think that really gave me a good foundation of appreciating our beautiful lands and being a proud member of our reservation.
That's beautiful. I want to talk about your journey, but why don't you give me a quick introduction to your book? But tell me about your Sacagawea book.
Yes. And so my new book is called It's Her Story Sacagawea. It was introduced last October online through Amazon.com. And believe it or not, I had to order my first book from Amazon because our publishing company didn't have any of the books available to provide, which is kind of weird. But regardless, I was able to order to see and witness, feel my first book. I was so excited. The book is actually a graphic novel about Sacagawea. And for those of you that may not know who Sacagawea is Lemhi Shoshone from Salmon, Idaho. And she was taken from Salmon, Idaho by the Mandan Hidatsa tribe, one of our enemy tribes. And this was back in the probably about 1780s. And she was taken, enslaved, and captured. And this book is about her journey as a Shoshone woman that tells the story of her perspective. And my research started when I was 14, believe it or not. I was working for the Shoshone Bannock Tribal Museum as part of their summer youth program. And one of the big questions that we received from the tourists was Sacagawea. So I started looking into Sacagawea, and there was no books on Sacagawea that existed at that time. And so I went to a lot of our elders that visited our museum, and a lot of them are no longer with us today, and was able to get a lot of perspectives of the Shoshone version of Sacagawea, from the time that she was taken from our people to the time after Sacagawea returned after the expedition. Where did she go? How many children did she have? Does her family still exist? Her family line? So all these questions I received, and I wanted to know the answers. And keep in mind, I'm only 14. And then when I got into college, I was asked to be a model for a project with the United States coin, and had no idea that my connection with Sacagawea was going to come full circle. And it was a year after I modeled for an artist out of Santa Fe. Her name is Glenna Goodacre. She's originally from Texas. And Glenna informed me that she was seeking a Shoshone girl for the facial characteristics because to date, there are no images or photos of Sacagawea. All we know is she was Shoshone. She was from Idaho, and she was taken. She had a child at 13, so very little information existed at that time. And I actually pursued in my college years a degree in history and museum studies. And so it was really important for me to be able to understand the history and represent my tribal history. And so when we were talking about the project with Glenna, we told her we would need to be not in my street clothes, but I would like to, appear in these photographs wearing our authentic regalia. So would have been a deerskin dress that Sacagawea would have been wearing. And Glenna surprised me and my mom, and she says, okay, come over tomorrow and we'll see what we can do. So we came over to her studio in Santa Fe on Canyon Road, which some of you may or may not know, but it's a very famous street in Santa Fe, New Mexico. It's where all of the top-notch artists live, have their studio. And it was just amazing. Went back to her studio the next day, and a local gallery delivered a deerskin dress, and I was able to wear it. And coming from the museum background, I was really scared because I thought I was too big or too small to wear a authentic dress that was, the age was circa 1900s, early 1900s. So it was fragile. And I'm thinking, I can't believe I'm actually putting on an artifact. Like, I shouldn't be doing this. It's like a no-no. But it was for the project, and I put it on, and it fit me perfect. So right then and there, I knew that this was going to work out. It was going to be a good day, and it was. And a year from that time, I heard back from the United States Mint, and I was going to college at the University of New Mexico. And I was really shocked to hear that the person that was calling me on my dormitory phone left me a message, and it was Philip Deal, who was the former U.S. Mint director. And I remember his dark voice saying, "Congratulations, Randy L. You and Glenna made the top candidates for the U.S. Mint project," and that they were going to post the proposed designs on usmint.gov at 6 o'clock Eastern time the next day. So that was 4 o'clock Mountain time. So I could not sleep all night because I was so anxious to see what these images would look like. Because keep in mind, it's been a year. I haven't even seen the photographs that Glenna took of me.
You hadn't seen them at all?
No.
She took them and then she sent them off?
Yes, because it was strict guidelines for the artist to send everything, all the materials that they worked on, and send it all to the U.S. Mint. It was property of them. And so I didn't even see them. And so I got up and I walked to the computer lab, typed in usmint.gov, and there my face appeared on the computer on the home page. And first thing that popped in my mind was, oh my gosh, I'm on the World Wide Web. I'm on the internet. And I was just so excited. Long story short, there were 2, 4, 6, 8. There was about 8 designs, if I remember correctly. And out of the 8, 7 were of me. I could not believe it. I just thought to myself,
know how many were entered in? That I got goosebumps when you were talking about like putting on the dress and having it fit perfectly. Like that just feels so aligned. But do you know how many images or, artists?
There were 23 artists that were selected by the United States Mint. And so in my mind, I'm thinking, where are the rest of the designs from these artists? And I just couldn't believe it. I was shocked. I was excited. I printed out probably a handful of my faces, mailed them to my grandmother, so this was during the time of, very little emails and social media. And so it was an amazing feeling. And, so my connection to Sacagawea started at a very young age. And I did not know that one day that I would have a chance or an opportunity to, be able to be a voice for Sacagawea. And so with this book, I'm very proud to have this book because it has been a long time that I've had these stories. And again, there are different versions, different Shoshone versions of Sacagawea. I represent the Northern Shoshone out of Idaho. And I have to be respectful of our sister tribes, which are the Eastern Shoshone out of the Fort Washakie Reservation in Wyoming. And then you have the Western Shoshone out of Nevada. And so, everyone's going to have a different version, but I felt that the version that I wrote really hones in on a lot of the versions in one. And I even included Shoshone words because, again, I wanted to make sure that this book, whether it was read by a Shoshone youth or a non-native or Hispanic or African-American, that our language is included because, again, language is so key to who we are as Native American peoples. And my grandparents were both fluent in the Shoshone and Bannock language. And so I did grow up around our language. And so I really felt that, again, part of our storytelling is important to be told in our language. I wish that I was a fluent speaker, but I am not, but I understand it. I can be in a conversation and understand what they're talking about. So again, it's Her Story Sacagawea is a story for 7 to 10-year-olds, but I have had teachers, professors, and business leaders commend me on just how exciting the book is. It just pulls you in. There's an emotional tie to just being a mother for women, and, this is something that you don't learn from the books from school. And that's huge, because we really need to start telling our tribal perspective of the stories that happened to our people. And Sacagawea, it took over 200 years for Sacagawea to gain recognition from the federal government for the duties that she served during the Lewis and Clark expedition of 1804 into 1806. So
that's an incredible story. And this book, I mean, as soon as I got my hands on it, it is truly phenomenal. I think the graphic novel is unique in a way because it breaks up the story. I think it's really fun. So the kids like it, but you're right. As a mom reading it, there were so many things, because I was obsessed with Sacagawea when I was younger. I was a homeschool kid for a few years. And so we went really deep on Lewis and Clark and Sacagawea. But even with all of that, right, I didn't know half of the things that are in your book. And reading it as a mom now, I don't know if you want to talk about some of those things, for her to give birth at such a young age without any help and then take her baby on this expedition.
Yeah.
I mean, I was in complete awe. Anyway, I think this is one of the most important books of our time. And I think that it's worth everyone reading, because this history is incredible. And you were the person to write this book.
Yes.
It's meant to be. I don't think anyone else could have written this book. And I really do hope that you come out with some more books on her for adults or for more ages, because it's powerful.
Thank you so much. And, I have had several teachers and professors reach out wanting to know more. I can easily talk about this topic for hours because there are so many interesting points of her life journey that is unwritten, unspoken. And for me to have listened to our elders that are no longer here talk about where she went, what she did, those are the things that, I do share, but I also have some information that's close to my heart that I won't disclose, because again, culturally, we have things that we can share and we cannot share. And so, this is definitely one of the stories that I wanted to share, because it's again, when I Googled Sacagawea book and looked at the books that are out there, none of them are written by a tribal author. And so that's where I just felt like there is a missing link to the literacy that is available to our children. And it's so crucial for us as Native peoples to start making the dent, start putting these stories out there. And so I hope that any tribal author, tribal writer out there listening, if you have a story, if you need help, please reach out to me. And I'm more than happy to share my information with my publisher so we can get more stories out there. Now, again, this is in regards to children's book, and for adults, adult stories, that's a different sector. But I am definitely interested in writing more and delving a little bit deeper into her story, Sacagawea's story after, because a lot of people don't know, did she pass away when she was in her 20s? Or did she live to be 100 years old? Even the way we say her name, the Shoshones refer to her as Sacagawea with a J. Growing up, that's how we said her name. That's how we spelled it. And then you'll see in the Mandan Hidatsas, the people that took her, because their language is different than us. And when she was over there and she said her name, they heard it as Sacagawea, because in their language, they have the Ks. Their language is different. So that's how you got the version Sacagawea. And so the U.S. men taking both Sacagawea and Sacagawea ended up referring to her as Sacagawea with the G. So a lot of people are still a little confused about that, but I would recommend saying it the Shoshone way because she's Shoshone. So Sacagawea.
Thank you for clearing that up, because that was one of my first questions, I think, when we were connecting, because I really wanted to bring you to some of our schools so that our students here in Idaho, we do Idaho history in 3rd and 4th grade. And so I just felt like this was such a cool opportunity for some of our local schools to have access to you. But that was one of my first questions, was how do you actually say her name? Because I grew up saying Sacagawea, and then I think it was middle school-ish. It was the whole kind of changing it up. And so thank you for
yes. Yeah, no problem. And a lot of people think, did she die? No, we actually have oral tradition stories stating that she lived to be an elderly. And she, after the expedition, she went through some hardship because, again, being away for 2 years. And I like to tell the kids, picture yourself being on a camping trip for 2 years. That's exactly what it was. And I think us as parents, we all know just how tiring it is after a week-long camping trip. And so I can't imagine, just how relieved she was to kind of just be back into an area where there was access to food and not having to worry about the change of weather, because they definitely went through a lot of different seasons. They starved to death. Sometimes they didn't know what they were going to eat for dinner or even eat for breakfast. And so with her knowledge of the landscape and the know-how of how to hunt for small game, she was able to teach the young men that were on the expedition how to make small snares, how to cook them properly, how to gather some of the medicines that were located in the areas, for tea, the right berries that weren't poisonous or would make them sick. So there was so much knowledge that she shared during the 2 years. And it would be so interesting to hear from the families of those young men that served with her during the expedition. I mean, how cool would that be to learn from, if any of that information was passed down to their kids? I mean, we're talking over 200 years. And, and within our tribe, when it comes to storytelling, we're passing down information, and it's very critical that, our grandparents are the ones to teach the young ones. And so for tribal cultures, that information is there. But I often wonder, if some of that information was passed down from those that did serve in the expedition with her. So, and a lot of these oral traditions, they provide moral lessons. Don't be out late at night. Don't go by the river. There's lots of reasons of why we tell things to our children on, how to behave, how to communicate. A lot of it is about our cultural beliefs and just the tribal history and the tribal family history. So, again, storytelling is very broad, but again, I do my best to hone it in. And in this case, it's all about Sacagawea. I would love to do a story about my story because, I'm from a reservation, left the reservation to pursue a higher education and ended up having this opportunity drop in my lap, literally. And then to be able to speak on behalf of all Native American peoples, that's a huge responsibility. I got to rub elbows with a lot of congressmen, the president. I got the opportunity to speak at very large conferences all over the world. And, and I'm just a small town girl. No one would have thought ever, that I'd be out there rubbing shoulders with the president in Washington, D.C. So, it's all great though. I'm happy to be home. I'm happy to be here in my community and to be able to represent my tribe, my family in everything that I do.
That's amazing. I would love to talk a little bit more about your story, because I think, and the storytelling piece of this, right? I think culturally with the storytelling that your tribe does, and it's amazing the way that you are able to pass down those things. Think of all the history that's preserved within all those stories. How are you doing that now? As you're obviously a beautiful storyteller, because you just gave us examples of great storytelling, but with your kiddos or with the work that you're doing, how do you think about story now? And are there ways that you're consciously integrating it into your life, or is it just so naturally a part of who you are that it's effortless?
Well, growing up, my grandfather, I was very fortunate to be able to hear some of his stories, but I was so young that I did not listen to everything that he said. And I really wish that someone captured him on video so we can have that, because he was so full of wisdom, and same with my grandmother. And, growing up now, and, I'm in my early 40s now. And when I think about how our stories are being shared today in this new generation, there is a huge shift from the actual elder speaking to our youth versus now we have recordings of our elders from 50 years ago. So with that said, I'm seeing a decrease in the sharing of our stories, and it really depends on the families as well. We have some families that have a lot of knowledge, a lot of rich storytelling. And then we have some families that, have lost their elders in their families to share the knowledge. And so I think it's important nowadays for tribes to have language and culture departments to be the keepers, the archivists of protecting our stories. And they're now able to speak in Shoshone and Bannock from the English versions, which is awesome and so much needed, because again, we have a dwindling number of Bannock speakers within our community. And my family, we are Bannock. We recognize ourselves as the Bannock and then Shoshone. And growing up Bannock, that's what my grandpa spoke fluently. And we had a lot of relations that would come from Fort Hall, and they'd travel over on horse or buggy and visit my grandpa, and they would have coffee and eat stew or beans and just talk about the old days. And my dad remembers those stories, and, they share those things with us. And it just really makes me wish that my kids were able to hear and see and smell, those memories, because those are the good things that, I'm so blessed to have witnessed and seen. But I do see our storytelling has definitely decreased because we're losing a lot of our elders. And so for me, being in my early 40s, I am just so humbled and honored to be able to add value to maintaining some of our storytelling. I never would have thought to call myself a storyteller, but again, I think it's something that you have to have a lot of experience, and you have to have a lot of patience and the willingness to listen and learn and then express. And that's what I did. So even though I wanted to write this story years ago, the way I look at it is it wasn't meant to be. And last year, it fell in my laps. I did not chase after it. I actually had a publisher reach out to me, and that's how it started. I mean, I did not look for a publisher. I already had a story written, and it was just an amazing experience, because once she said, we need a manuscript next week, I finished my manuscript in 4 days. I submitted over 50 pages, and it's just because I already had it written and I just needed to add more elements and details, cross-check my dates. And so I was able to just, conquer that. And then she was impressed with that because she told me that most manuscripts are completed, sometimes in a couple of months, and it takes a couple of different versions. In this case, and probably because it was a children's book. So we're talking, let's see, I'm looking at the book right now. There are 43 pages. So compared to my 50 plus pages of manuscript, it was broken down to in the 40s. So
did you know it was going to be a graphic novel? Or when she approached you, are those 50 pages like full on, normal quote unquote book pages?
Yeah.
Okay.
They were.
Wow.
They
so
were
it was condensed a lot for this.
Yes, it was. It was condensed big time.
Wow.
I'm really glad that she mentioned that in their series, a lot of their books are graphic novels. And I was very happy to hear that because I do believe a lot of young readers today, because of social media, our way of looking and reading has changed drastically, even from my time and our time of going to school and reading books where all you're seeing is just words on a page. And every once in a while, you'll see a picture.
Yeah.
Now, books nowadays are filled with pictures, and it just makes it more appealing, and it makes it easier to read and comprehend. So I'm really glad that they chose this to be a graphic novel.
Did your publisher find you because of the Sacagawea coin, or how did she? I love that I love that these things that are so beautiful in your life just have been falling in your lap. This is amazing. But how did she find you?
She found me on LinkedIn, and it's crazy because I was not active on LinkedIn for a while. I started an account when it first came out and never really felt like it served me well. I just felt like it was another area I needed to post and maintain. We have Instagram and X and Facebook. And it was probably 2 years ago that I had a friend of mine and we were at a social media training, and she was encouraging me that you need to strengthen your LinkedIn profile because there are a lot of opportunities to network in what you're doing. And I felt like, so I went in, updated it, and last year, that's where the publisher found me. I don't know how she found me. She just messaged me. And I remember she says, "Are you really the model for the Sacagawea dollar coin?" And I kind of get a couple of, what I call spam. I don't know whether they're spam or they're real people. And I felt like, okay, this sounds like it's a real person. So I responded back, yes. And she says, she was so excited. She was like, "Oh my gosh, I have a book series and we're highlighting women that have paved the way." And she just really wanted me to see if I was interested in writing a book about Sacagawea. And of course I said yes. And that's where we started. And I just was amazed at how quick that this book came out. And not only that, but one of my questions to her was the illustrations. And
I wanted to go there next. I want to talk about that.
Yeah. So not only am I providing her the story, but who is going to illustrate the visual of my book? And she says, "Oh, we already have someone." And I was concerned. I was like, oh no, if it's an in-house, is this person really going to understand the tribal perspective, the tribal landscape? Are they going to understand, the cultural aspects of this story? And she says, and, she's Native American. And she was looking at her profile, and she goes, "Oh, she's actually Shoshone. And I said, what? She goes, oh, she's actually from Fort Hall, just like you. And I said, okay, who is this? Because, in my community, I know everybody.
Yeah.
And if I don't know them, it's probably because they're young. And she says, her name is Ellie McKnight, and she is Shoshone Bannock, and it looks like she lives in Nevada. And I was like, okay, I'm aware of the McKnight family, and this is awesome. So that's how it all started. And once my manuscript had a final draft, it was provided to Allie McKnight, and Allie did an amazing job. Like, she was given a couple of months to work on it, and I probably reviewed one draft, and already I was amazed. I was just impressed. So what you see is what she created, and just the front book cover of Sacagawea is beautiful. So I made some beautiful posters, and I have those posters with me. So whenever I go do my talks, I bring them with me, and I don't have them on my website just because to mail posters is quite expensive.
Yeah.
So for anyone out there, you have to bring me to your community, and I'll bring some posters, and they're beautiful posters of the front cover of the book. So
Did she use your old modeling pictures at all as inspiration, or was she using everything from, the stories that she had been told and what she knows of, Idaho and the West as she was creating this?
I think she was using the photo of me, which is in the book. It's on page 44. So it's a picture of me in one of my deerskin dresses that my auntie Truma Davis made for me years ago. And when we were talking, I was referencing that Sacagawea, she was not wearing a fancy deerskin dress. I mean, her dress was very humble. I mean, she just returned back from the 2-year expedition, and so the image that everyone sees on this book cover is definitely a visual of my deerskin dress and some beadwork on her arms. And then she's got like a knife and a yellow belt and long braid and shell earrings. So very beautiful.
The book is visually stunning, and it's, I think it's just so well done. And I brought Randy L in to bring out a couple schools, and you're such a beautiful presenter. And I just want to give you a plug in case anyone's listening to this and they're like, let's have her come to our school. The kids were enamored with you, and they're still talking about it. And I think it was just such a cool moment for them to be able to see something. And they asked you such smart questions. I was just, you had one of your beaded necklaces with you, and you had, it was just, you brought it to life for them. And that was really, really cool, because I think we don't get that all the time in school. And so it was neat for them to have this hands-on approach to a story that all of a sudden became very real. And so.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you, Amy. Actually, that's what it's all about. I thrive on the ability to bring happiness and understanding for the kids, because we are not seeing that motivation or interest of history. When kids nowadays, when they think about history and science and math, they're thinking boring. And I know this because I have 3 children, 11, 16, and 17, going on 18. So I know. And, for me, when I'm standing in front of the children and I tell them, or they find out that I'm the model for the Sacagawea dollar coin, their eyes get big, their mouths drop, and they're just like, what? No way. And I just love to see their expressions, because I know at that moment that they are going to remember this day for the rest of their life. And I want them to be able to walk away from my presentations with a better understanding and pride of being from the state of Idaho, because Idaho history, when it comes to Native American history, there is so much amazing history in all of our cities in the whole state. There has been something that has happened in that city that is not being talked about, whether it was, like, I think it's like in Rigby, Idaho, it's the development of the TV, the guy that invented TV is right from Rigby, Idaho. So you have stories that sometimes are not being shared. And so when I'm in front of the kids, I'm just like, yes, this is me. I'm a real person and I'm right here from this community. And I wrote a book, and they're just amazed. And they do have really smart questions. Like, I am impressed.
I was impressed too. One thing I really loved about your presentation, and it was fun because you kind of tailored it per each. We went to 2 schools together, and one school was more of an assembly type feeling, and the other one was like a really intimate classroom feeling, and that was really fun. So your presentation
So fun
to fit the group. But at the first school, what I loved, and if you're not from Idaho, take this for your own place, but Idaho has a lot of lava rock and sagebrush. And to some people, it's really beautiful. And then other people, it's just sagebrush and rock, whatever. And at the very beginning, I don't know if you remember this, Randy L., but you pointed out, how sacred the rocks were and the sagebrush. And I think, that's not really what kids are hearing or what we're hearing necessarily. And so it was such a beautiful tie back to your culture, and then also where they were in a place. To me, it just brought a whole new appreciation, and I loved it. You're an amazing presenter. And that was one like special thing that I wasn't expecting that you did. And you also spoke in your language and spoke some of the words so people could hear them. And that was really cool.
Yes. Thank you. And no, that's just part of the way I was raised, is you have to acknowledge your space and the place where you're at. And I wanted the kids to understand that your school and where you live is home of my people. Like, if you think 100 years ago, we would have been hunting, gathering, fishing along these banks and along these hills. And, I want them to understand that even though they may not see Native Americans in the community, at the grocery store, at the movies, in that town, I want them to understand that there was a strong presence of Native American people. And being in Shoshone, I haven't been there for years. And it was really emotionally moving for me, because like there was so much lava rock. And so growing up, traditionally, we use the lava rock for our churches. We heat the lava rock up. They're called the lava rocks, and they're the tinier ones. I'm not talking about the big old boulders, but we take the tiny lava rocks, we heat them up in a pit for hours, and then we place them inside our sweat lodge. And that's a time for us to spiritually cleanse, not only physically, but mentally and spiritually. And it's our way of connecting with the greater being. And, that's the way I was raised. And so it's like, driving down the road just to the school and seeing all the pile of lava rocks, I was like, I got to come back here and load up and, put it in my back of my vehicle and take them home, because those are blessings right there. So again, for me, wherever I go, I always look to what tribes existed in this area, and I'll call it out. That's just the way it should be, is we should acknowledge our brothers and our sisters that are Native American that may not be there no more. Maybe their reservation is relocated somewhere else. Yeah. So it's important to acknowledge.
It's a really, really beautiful reminder and thought for people, because I think, I grew up here, so I see it in my view, and you brought that back to me. That was just such a gift for me personally. as an adult. And I think for those kids to have someone saying that was really, really beautiful. And so
Thank you.
yeah, thank you. I think I'd love to hear a piece of advice on that as we travel or as we go places. Do you do some history before you go, just so you are aware of the past? Is that part of a practice that you do? Or I'd love to know, I'd love to hear how can we bring that more into our life so that we're aware of that past history, so we can honor the place and the people and the stories that are not there maybe for us at that moment, but we can make them part of our story as we're experiencing a place. How can we honor?
Well, for example, if I'm going to go to Philadelphia, you want to Google Philadelphia, and a lot of times, on Wikipedia or even on Google, if you say what tribes existed in Philadelphia, and it'll bring up some of the tribes that, and some historical warfare, relocation facts. And that's where, you kind of start, digging a little deeper. And, I think for me, just coming from a museum background, from a history background, I learned about this acknowledgement, when I started to work in the tribal museum and learning from my mom. I'm really grateful and thankful for my mother, because she raised us to always give thanks for being alive and having our culture, because a lot of people don't have that. And so we are really fortunate, to be able to just have our culture and our traditions. And as I've grown into an adult and I went to school out of state, I just started to dig a little bit deeper and started recognizing that as Native American people, we don't honor our brothers and our sisters of other tribes as often as we should. Nowadays, you're starting to see that happen more, and that's with the land acknowledgements. The land acknowledgements, I think, are important for any organization, corporation, university to acknowledge and honor the tribes that existed in that landscape. And that's really what it is. It's about sharing that information with everybody. So for me, I believe in that. And so I do the same thing. And it's interesting because sometimes if the language is available, the language of the tribe that was there, I'll look up to see how you say hello in that language. And if I meet somebody at that event, I'll address them, with that language. And from Native American to Native American, that's okay. But, for those listening that, if you're not Native, sometimes that might come off to them as like, are you making fun of me? But from Native to Native, it's okay for us to do that. And then they'll probably share with me, this is how you really say it, or this is how you should say it. But language is really key. It really is a bridge builder. It connects us as Native American people to one another, because we're all going through the same problem of language revitalization, language loss. Our language is found in our stories of our singing, everything, how we connect with the land, the animals. So language just isn't just a small topic. It's a huge topic throughout Indian country. And that's one of the reasons why I wanted to make sure to incorporate my language in the book.
Wow. I'm really thank you for giving us that advice and that information. I think that's really beautiful and a practice we can all start doing as we go places, and to really to honor spaces. And
yes.
Are there any words in your book that you would like to tell us so we can hear you pronounce that? Is that okay? You pronounce them?
Yeah.
Since you have it right in front of you.
So, yeah, I actually have it. I'm looking at it. I'm holding the book in my hand, and it really is beautiful. And it's a hardback. For some of you that may have not actually seen the book, it's a hardback. It's just full of vibrant colors. But in the first, how it starts is with a grandmother and her granddaughter, and they're sitting in the living room, and grandmother says, I see the tooth fairy left something for my granddaughter. And the little girl says, Gagu, is this an Indian girl? And Gagu in our language means grandmother. And then the grandma says, that's a young Shoshone girl just like you. Her name is Sacagawea. And then the little girl says, well, how did she get on a coin? And grandma says, Sacagawea was a very brave girl who traveled hundreds of miles to find her way home. And she starts thinking, kind of daydreaming about Sacagawea, and Sacagawea appears with a butterfly by her head, and you got the landscape of the mountain range behind Sacagawea, and then it goes into the story. And again, you want to order the book, you can order it online. I do have a couple of places where you can get the book, where I already autographed the book. The Idaho State Historical Museum in Boise, Idaho has the book. In Salmon, Idaho, the Sacagawea Interpretive Center will have it soon, hopefully by the end of the month. So I have outlets where anybody listening, if you're in Idaho, you can get it. And if you're not in Idaho, then you can just order it online. But yeah, so Gagu is grandmother. And then throughout the book, I've got some keywords that are also used throughout. So yeah, it's just an amazing book. And I actually want to get it. I want to get it in a Shoshone version. So an audio book in the Shoshone.
Oh, wow.
So that is a project that I'm working on.
Okay.
And then also in the Bannock language for our Bannock speakers, because we do have a language immersion school called Chief Tagi in Fort Hall. And and so they speak from, I think it's kindergarten to second grade. They'll speak all Shoshone, and the kids are amazing. I've done some presentations over there in the past and actually read my book to them, and they were so excited to see the language in the book, And again, that just, it warms my heart to know that our kids, our youth, our future, we're not dying. It's just that we're going through a little bit of a slow process, and, but we're strong people. We get right up and maintain that thread of courage and making sure that our kids understand who we are. And that's what it's all about, really. I'm just contributing. I'm just a part of the contributions to our kids understanding who they are as Shoshone, Bannock, as Native American, as indigenous peoples of this nation. So, yeah.
Do you have one last piece of advice for anyone that's looking to maybe write a book, or that's maybe just heard this and it's inspired them to go back and start paying attention to history that maybe has been tucked away? Is there one final thing you want to say to people?
Yeah. I would just say, continue to listen and learn and read. And if you're doing some research, make sure that the information is written by a tribal member of a tribe. You can't believe everything on the website or Google. I actually need to work on providing a list of approved sources on my website. Check out my website, randylteton.com. You can follow me on Instagram and Facebook and LinkedIn.
Good job.
And LinkedIn. And, I consistently post and I acknowledge other books that are out there. I mean, there are a lot of amazing stories being told and written by tribal authors, but just be careful. There might be a post where someone's sharing some information about Sacagawea, but it's not approved by the tribe, or it's not cited by a tribal source. So just be careful of the information, and you can't believe everything on the website. But again, I would suggest following a tribal government website, looking at what they have, because they might have a list of books that you can read. Visit the local tribal museums and cultural centers. Like that's going to be that should be your first place of connecting with the history of that tribe, being that's where I started.
That's a great recommendation. We're coming this summer. I think you said August, right? Is when there's something that's happening. So I'm planning a trip.
For those of you listening, if you don't know what we're talking about, the second weekend in August, come on out to Fort Hall, Idaho. We celebrate for 4 days our Shoshone Bannock Festival. And what it is it's not just a powwow, it's an outdoor powwow. But also we have Indian relay racing, we have a baseball game, hand games, and a free buffalo and salmon feast. Free. Keep in mind, it's free. You go to a lot of other powwows throughout Indian country and everybody's charging admission or they're charging for the feast. We have always hosted our feast for free, and you're getting buffalo and salmon.
Wow.
Yeah. So those are our two most sacred foods and sources for my people, and we share it. So
how beautiful.
Yeah, it's an amazing time. So definitely come on out. It starts on a Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. You can get your buffalo stew. You can get your fry bread fix. You can witness a lot of beauty of our dances. And again, checking out the Indian relay races, which brings me to the point of that's one of my future books is I'm working on a children's book about the Indian relay race, which is special to me because I was raised around Indian relay. Growing up, my dad is a former champion Indian relay racer. My family on my Teton side and my Osborne side, on my mom's side, they all have their own teams. And what it is, it's a traditional race horse competition. And you have 3 horses, 1 rider, and the rider goes around the track once and then comes in to exchange onto the next horse on bareback, going all the way around the track again. You do it 3 times. And there's a lot that happens during that time of transition from exchanging your horse. It's a very, very competitive competition, but we've been doing it for hundreds of years, ever since we got the horses. We became really good at it. And we have other tribes from Montana, Wyoming, Washington, and Nevada come to Fort Hall to basically bragging rights of winning first place. There's money involved. There's horse blankets involved. There's trophies. There's buckles. It definitely is a time to kind of root on your favorite rider. So my dad was our family rider, and now he was able to teach my nephew. And so me and my nephew, Mias Teton, is our champion rider. He actually won the Eastern Idaho State Fair Indian Relay Champ. So the Teton team, we actually won. So awesome. So it's definitely something to see if you have not witnessed it, and you can Google it, Fort Hall Indian Relay, if you want to learn more about it.
Wow. Thank you for explaining that. I am so honored that we have gotten to have you today. Thank you for your time and your stories and your wisdom. And I'll make sure everyone gets access to your website and these books, because they truly are, for kids, phenomenal, but for an adult, I think even more powerful. So
yes.
Phenomenal. Thank you so much. I appreciate you.
Thank you.
We'll talk to you soon. Bye.
Thanks for listening to Business Origin Stories. Love the podcast? Be sure to share it with a friend or colleague and give us a review on Apple Podcasts. Join me on Instagram and make sure to sign up for our weekly email.